In the shadowy world of after-hours clubs and underground parties, dark secrets lurk behind closed doors. These chilling stories reveal a world of illicit substances, shootings, and mysterious accidents. Join us as we explore the terrifying consequences of a dangerous hidden nightlife. January 2nd, 2013 was supposed to be a normal night at work for Lauren Block. At 22 years old, Lauren worked as a stripper at Christie's Cabaret in Cleveland. But what started as a routine night of dancing in the Gentlemen's Club ended in brutal tragedy. Little is known about Lauren Block's personal life. The young woman was 22 years old and had long black hair. Those close to her describe her as a bright light in a dark room, a person who often had a big smile on. She was someone who inspired others. Lauren had her whole life ahead of her. But on January 2nd, 2013, during her shift at the Cleveland-based club, fate intervened in the most unimaginable way. It was the early hours of the morning. Lauren was with a customer, a man named Pasquale Storino, on the second floor of the club. The young woman was performing a routine lap dance for Storino, a job she had likely done countless times before. During the dance, though, Lauren grabbed onto a railing, attempting a jump dance move. It was a difficult, high-risk maneuver, certainly made more dangerous by the elevated position on the balcony. It all happened in an instant. Something went wrong. Lauren somehow lost her grip and fell headfirst over the railing. The fall was brutal. From the second-floor balcony, Lauren plummeted 15 feet to the ground below, landing with devastating force. When first responders arrived, they found her unconscious, bleeding heavily and critically injured. She was rushed to Metro Health Medical Center, where she was placed under intensive care. In the meantime, another client came forward and told the police he had seen two men flee the scene, but the identities of those men remain unknown. After watching video surveillance footage inside the club, police decided not to treat the incident as a criminal case. For nearly a week, doctors fought to save Lauren Block's life, but the damage had been done. The head trauma she sustained from the fall was too severe, and on January 9th, Lauren Block was pronounced dead. Lauren's death sent waves of grief through her family and friends, who were left to grapple with the sudden loss of a loved one so young. In the midst of their pain, her family found solace in the fact that Lauren was an organ donor. In a statement, they expressed hope that her death, while tragic, would not be in vain, saying that through her donation, she might save others' lives. It was a small but meaningful act of grace in an otherwise devastating time. Her family thanked the Metro Health staff for their tireless efforts, but their loss was immeasurable. The club where the accident occurred, Christie's Cabaret, did not provide any comment on the incident, but questions quickly arose about the safety protocols in place. One former colleague, Danielle Edwards, struggled to understand how such an accident could have happened. She explained that even when wearing 6-inch heels, the railing on the second floor seemed high enough to prevent such a fall. How she managed to get a majority of her body that far over the railing to where she lost her balance is confusing, Edwards said. It was a sentiment echoed by many. How could this happen? Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, launched an investigation into the incident, examining factors such as the height of the railing and the distance between the customer's seat and the balcony edge. For those left behind, there are no easy answers, only the hope that, through her final act of generosity as an organ donor, Lauren's spirit might live on in some small way. In November 1983, the Condor Club was one of the most famous places in San Francisco, California. Every night, patrons of the club would gather to watch Carol Doda, the city's first topless dancer, perform her particular kind of magic. But one November night, the famous Gentlemen's Bar became the backdrop of a tragic and bizarre accident which claimed the life of James the Beard Ferrazzo, the club's assistant manager. What began as an after-hours moment of intimacy between Ferrazzo and his girlfriend would end in an unimaginable disaster. James the Beard Ferrazzo was a 40-year-old man deeply embedded in the culture of the Condor Club. For many, the Condor Club symbolized a blend of entertainment, glamour, and excess, and Ferrazzo was a figure right at the heart of it all. Ferrazzo was a mellow guy whom people described as really cool. In November 1983, 40-year-old Ferrazzo was in a relationship with 23-year-old Teresa Hill, a nude dancer at another establishment. That night, after Condor Club closed, The two lovebirds decided to stay there. They spent their time drinking, and then one of them had an idea. The Condor Club was famous for its risque performances and legendary dancer, Carol Doda. Doda was a cultural icon in San Francisco for her daring performances, especially her signature entrance, in which she was lowered onto the stage atop a grand white piano by a hydraulic lift. James Ferrazzo and Teresa Hill decided to share a moment of intimacy on the white piano that had made Carol Doda's performances legendary. But as the couple lay on the piano, unaware of the danger, one of them accidentally triggered the hydraulic lift mechanism that operated the instrument. The massive instrument, designed to raise and lower performers onto the stage during elaborate shows, began to ascend toward the ceiling with the couple on it. The piano rose steadily, the lift carrying it slowly upward, but Ferrazzo and Hill were trapped, unable to stop the mechanism as it moved toward disaster. Electrically powered cables hoisted the piano to an opening in the ceiling, which connected with dressing rooms. But Ferrazzo was far enough from the center of the instrument to miss the opening in the ceiling. As such, the impact was brutal. Ferrazzo, a large man, was crushed against the ceiling by the full weight of the piano, suffering fatal injuries almost immediately. His death was the result of asphyxiation, the force of the instrument and his own weight pressing down on him. Hill, who was much thinner than Ferrazzo, survived, but she was trapped under his lifeless body, pinned against the piano, unable to move. For hours, Hill remained in this nightmarish situation, alone and unable to free herself from the tragic scene. She was nude, severely traumatized, and stuck under Ferrazzo's body until the club's janitor discovered them hours later during his morning rounds. The janitor immediately called for help. The firefighters worked for 3 hours to safely release her from beneath Ferrazzo's body because the motor running the lift mechanism had burned out. Although it was clear that Ferrazzo died of asphyxiation, questions remained. Dancers at the club said the piano's ascent was always slow. As such, they believed Ferrazzo and Hill could have jumped off and avoided the tragedy. The accident shocked San Francisco. The Condor Club, famous for pushing boundaries and being an epicenter of San Francisco's liberal, free-spirited culture, now had a darker association. The same hydraulic lift that had made Carol Doda's performances iconic had, in a tragic twist, claimed the life of one of the club's own. As for Teresa Hill, she was left to cope with the aftermath of surviving such an unimaginable ordeal. In October 2017, Mark Cox, a 36-year-old British tourist from Loftus, North Yorkshire, embarked on what should have been an enjoyable getaway to Krakow, Poland, alongside his friend Steven Skiba. But what started as a casual holiday ended in tragedy when Mark became the victim of a sinister plot at a local strip club. Mark Cox was well liked by those who knew him. He was a sociable, hard-working man with a love for football, particularly Leeds United, a passion he shared with his father, Graham. Mark had many friends and was considered the life and soul of any gathering, always positive and easygoing. Mark was also a dedicated worker, known for putting in overtime so he could enjoy his free time and vacations, one of which would tragically be his last. That October, Mark had traveled to Krakow with his friend Steven Skiba for a short break. The trip had been a spur-of-the-moment decision, as both men were single and looking to unwind. The two friends were cautious of Krakow's reputation for pickpocketing and tourist scams, opting to carry only the cash they needed for their nights out. However, they could not have foreseen the events that would take place at Wild Night, a local strip club that had earned a darker reputation than they realized. The first night they visited the club, Mark and Steven felt uneasy. They were persistently pressured by staff to stay longer and drink more, prompting them to leave after a single drink. That night, Steven felt unwell, suspecting his drink may have been spiked. Despite his unease, he agreed to return to the club the following night, not wanting to spoil Mark's trip. On the fateful night, the two friends wandered through Krakow's side streets, eventually ending up back at Wild Night. Despite their initial reluctance, they were convinced to enter the club again. Once inside, Mark and Steven were separated and led to different booths. Steven quickly became concerned when he saw other patrons leaving the club in a drunken, disoriented state, warning that the girls inside were robbing them. Growing increasingly worried, Steven left the club and stopped a police car to get help. But the officers laughed at Steven, leaving him more distressed, and then left. A man from a nearby shop then told Stephen the officers were part of the local mafia. Fearing for Mark's safety, Stephen re-entered the club, attempting to reach him, but was prevented from doing so by the club's bouncers, who kept trying to sell him more drinks while blocking his access to the back rooms. Stephen's worry deepened when he witnessed two strippers running toward the bar area in a state of panic, followed by paramedics performing CPR on someone. It soon became clear that the victim was Mark. Stephen was initially told by staff that Mark was fine, but when he asked again, a bouncer laughed in his face and told him, "Your friend is dead." Mark's death was later confirmed to be the result of alcohol poisoning. He had been forced to consume 22 shots of alcohol in rapid succession, leaving him with a blood alcohol content of at least 0.4%, a lethal level. Despite his refusal to continue drinking, Mark had been coerced by the club's staff, a tactic believed to be part of a larger scheme to rob intoxicated tourists. After Mark collapsed, his wallet was taken, and he was left to die in the club. He was found to have been robbed of approximately 420 pounds. Prosecutors said, the staff deprived him not only of money, but above all of his life. In the aftermath, Polish authorities launched an investigation into the events surrounding Mark's death. The Wild Night Strip Club was implicated in a broader criminal operation targeting tourists. Several arrests were made and over 700 charges were filed against individuals involved in the racket. The crime group, allegedly composed of club owners and staff, was accused of forcing patrons to consume large amounts of alcohol and then charging them exorbitant amounts, sometimes tricking them into taking out loans to cover the fabricated debts. Despite these arrests, Mark's family, particularly his sister Samantha, has expressed frustration and disappointment with the lack of accountability. To this day, no one has been held directly responsible for Mark's death, leaving his family feeling forgotten in their quest for justice. For his loved ones, Mark's death is a source of enduring pain and grief. His life, marked by joy, friendship, and family bonds, was cut short by a cruel and calculated act. As the investigation into his death continues, his family holds on to the hope that one day they will find the closure they so desperately seek. It was December 2016 in Melbourne, Australia, when Stacey Tierney's life was cut short under mysterious circumstances. The 29-year-old from Manchester worked in a strip club, a fact not many in her circle of friends and family knew. The inquest into Stacey's death revealed troubling details about the hours leading up to her passing, leaving her family in anguish, seeking justice and clarity about what really happened during those final hours. Stacey Tierney, originally from Withington, Manchester, had traveled to Australia to explore new opportunities and pursue her education. After her boyfriend secured an engineering job in Victoria, Stacey decided to move with him. She enjoyed traveling and took the chance to see Australia while she worked towards gaining her study visa. She eventually received approval for her visa in November 2016, with plans to save money and fund her nursing studies. To do so, she took a job at Dreams Gentlemen's Club, though it was not a position she enjoyed. Stacey had confided in friends that she didn't like working at the club, but saw it as a necessary means to achieve her educational goals. On the night of December 17th, Stacey arrived at the club at 8:20 p.m. to work her usual shift. She worked into the early morning hours, as was typical, until the club closed to customers at 4 a.m. Afterward, a staff party commenced in the manager's office, where Stacey and several colleagues remained after hours. The inquest revealed that this party was the last place Stacey was seen alive. Two men, Joseph Beret and Thomas Mesfun, were with Stacey during the hours that followed, and their inconsistent accounts of what transpired during the party have left many questions unanswered. At some point during the early morning of December 18th, Stacey lost consciousness in the office, and her condition worsened as time passed. It was later found that Stacey had multiple substances in her system, including stimulants and depressants, which all contributed to her death. However, the exact circumstances under which she ingested these substances remain unclear. What is known is that between 5:30 and 6 a.m., one of the men, Joseph Beret, sent a message to the bar manager, expressing concern that Stacey was unresponsive and admitting uncertainty about how to proceed. Despite this, no one called for medical help. More troublingly, it wasn't until December 19th, more than 30 hours after Stacey was last seen alive, that police and paramedics were finally called to the club. By then, it was too late. When emergency services arrived, they found Stacy's lifeless body on a sofa in the manager's office, partially clothed, while Barry and Mesfun remained in the same room. Paramedics on the scene heard one man remark to another, "I think we're all right here," a chilling statement that suggested an awareness of wrongdoing. Despite the presence of multiple people at the scene, none of them had acted to help Stacy or even alert the authorities in time. The office had been cleaned up before police arrived, further complicating the investigation. The delay in notifying authorities, the lack of CCTV, and the inconsistencies in the accounts provided by those present have led to an open verdict being recorded. The coroner noted that despite clear evidence of drug toxicity as the cause of death, there were still too many unanswered questions surrounding Stacy's final hours. Stacy's family, devastated by her death, has struggled to come to terms with the circumstances. Her mother, Michelle Frost, has spoken out about the inhumane treatment her daughter received in those critical hours. For Michelle, the most painful part is knowing that Stacy could have been saved if someone had acted sooner. In the wake of Stacy's death, there has been some accountability. The club's owner, Salvatore Aparo, was fined £16,000, and the Victorian Gambling and Casino Control Commission took disciplinary action against the club. Additionally, Stephen Kyriakou, the general manager of the club at the time, was banned from managing any licensed premises for a year. However, for Stacy's family, these punishments offer little solace. They are left with the haunting knowledge that Stacy was abandoned in her final moments and that those who were with her chose to do nothing as she lay there dying. It was the early hours of October 15th, 2023, when chaos erupted outside a pole dancing studio in Manhattan's Flatiron District. Outside the studio, people were screaming and fleeing half naked. Inside, a man named Steve Mussington lay dead. Stephen Mussington was a Harlem resident with a troubled past. Convicted earlier that year on federal bank fraud charges and with prior substance distribution offenses. Described by family as a good man despite his past, Stephen's life ended in a setting known for illicit activities, where pole dancing fitness by day morphed into something far more sinister after hours. Foxy Fitness and Pole Training Studio operated as a legitimate business during the day, offering classes and fitness routines. However, sources and police reports reveal that the studio was frequently transformed into an illegal after-hours club once the sun went down. This unregulated party space catered to a questionable clientele, with loud music, underage drinking, and other activities well outside the scope of its intended purpose. Complaints from neighbors and previous police visits had flagged the studio as a problematic location months before the fatal shooting, yet it remained operational. That night, on October 15, 2023, a dispute likely broke out during one of these after-hours parties. Details remain scarce, but reports indicate that Stephen Mussington was shot in the head during the altercation, and chaos ensued immediately after the shots were fired. Witnesses described a scene of panic, with people running from the building, some half-dressed, scrambling to escape as they realized a man lay dying in the stairwell. Police arrived shortly after, but it was too late. Stephen was pronounced dead at the scene, his body discovered in a dimly lit space surrounded by signs of an illicit party, including strobe lights and a stripper pole. The building itself had a history of violations, with multiple complaints to city agencies about noise, illegal alcohol consumption, and the improper use of the premises. Foxy Fitness and Pole Training Studios had been operating without proper permits and had a reputation for hosting these unregulated after-hours events. Despite warnings and complaints dating back several months, no significant action had been taken by authorities to shut the operation down. As of now, no arrests have been made, and investigators are still searching for the suspect and a clear motive. Police continue to gather evidence and question those who were at the party, though many of the individuals involved have provided little insight. Mussington's criminal past and the shady nature of the party raise the possibility that the shooting was tied to his previous dealings, but no definitive answers have emerged. The aftermath of this tragic event serves as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in unregulated spaces, where the line between entertainment and criminality is often blurred.